Joining us now is Joseph Rodgers. He's a nuclear expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you for joining us this morning, Joseph.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, so Iran claims one of its nuclear facilities was hit in the U.S.-Israeli strikes, but a UN nuclear watchdog is saying there's no indication that's true. What do we know about the situation?
So I think there's a lot that we don't know. We're currently still conducting extensive strikes in Iran. We do know that the administration has said that they targeted a number of core parts to the Iranian nuclear program. And I think there's reasons to question what's left in the Iranian nuclear program, because after the last June strikes in Operation Midnight Hammer, much of the program was destroyed. So the target set that's pretty much left consists of administrative buildings, offices, less the scientific and technical parts of the program, and more targets that sort of about the administration and programming. So it's likely that the U.S. targeted things like the atomic energy headquarters, where the sort of leadership and staff would be working, but less likely that they're targeting, the enrichment centers that we've already bombed.
Well, it seems like there's somewhat conflicting narratives about what they're doing here, because before this week, the International Atomic Energy Agency was unable to access Iran's bombed nuclear sites. How confident can we be in monitoring and reporting on Iran's nuclear program?
It's certainly a challenge. So we have been using the open source tools that we have available to monitor the facilities that the U.S. struck in Operation Midnight Hammer in June. And using satellite imagery and other sources of information, we have not seen any activity since last June to rehabilitate the core sites that consist of Iran's nuclear program. Now, they might have hidden clandestine sites that they haven't declared, but all of the sites that have been declared to the IAEA, we're able to monitor with satellite imagery. And I can say that we haven't seen extensive activity, scientific activity, people going back into the facilities. So when Trump started this war saying that Iran was reestablishing its nuclear program, we don't see those indications in the open source. We don't have all of the information, but it's pretty unclear what exactly they're talking about.
Interesting. So is this escalation increasing the risk Iran will accelerate nuclear activities once the fighting dies down, or could it have the opposite effect?
I think that Iran's nuclear program at this point is pretty well decimated. There's not the technology, the scientific know-how to really comprehensively establish a program rapidly. I do have a number of fears in the aftermath of Operation Epic Fury. I think one of the big fears, and something that we should be watching and hopefully the U.S. government's devoting some interest to, is what happens to the nuclear scientists and the nuclear material that is already in Iran when leadership collapses and potentially the government collapses. We need a plan to make sure that those scientists don't go to work for non-state actors, for terrorists across the region, and potentially to get looped into foreign governments that want to develop a nuclear weapon. So I think that sort of social science, capturing the scientists and making sure that they have a safe landing that isn't going to work for a terrorist organization is going to be paramount in the coming months.
What does the plan look like for that?
So the U.S. has done things like this in the past. When the Soviet Union collapsed, we embarked on a multi-billion-dollar investment to create jobs and training programs for Soviet scientists through something called cooperative threat reduction. But that was a bipartisan congressional effort, which sort of started with a bipartisan acknowledgement that this was a serious nonproliferation challenge. And so I think it would be difficult to imagine something like that happening that's U.S.-led in Iran in the aftermath of these strikes, but the future is really uncertain. But I think that there are other countries in the region that could step up, perhaps our allies that can step up and try and create something similar to a cooperative threat reduction program.
Interesting. All very interesting, Joseph. Thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Of course. Thank you.